so we're going to do some of the math piece. It's going to be helpful. On the second piece, I'm going to put things I need to ask for. This is because as I model and you're following along, it may be that you don't have these resources already, and you should probably go back to your school site to ask for them so that you can get your pacing guide or create your own. And then the third tab, I'm going to make a note that says unit planning notes. Again, in case there's some resources that you don't have, this is going to help you get there. So I'm going to model again from the very beginning. How do I get from the first step, which is my big goal, to that long-term planning piece? So I'm going to put myself back in my shoes from when I was an 8th grade science teacher in the Corps. My big goal was that my students scored on average proficient on our district benchmarks, which means I need to be able to look at that benchmark calendar to figure out what order I'm supposed to be teaching things. That they score an average of 80% on the unit assessments that I'm creating. And also, the thing that I didn't do, but that I would do now if I was a Corps member, I didn't do a really good job of building literacy skills in my students. And thinking about what would better prepare them for high school. If I could go back, I would add to my goal that I want to do lab writing skill building with my students. And so I would add to my big goal that my students will be able to conduct and write their own lab report by the end of the year. Those are the basic components of my goal. So now that I have those components, I need to figure out how much time do I actually have to make all of this happen. So the first thing I'm going to need is my school calendar. That's not the one. This is the one. This is a school calendar for LUSD where I taught. And basically what this looks like is, if I look at the key, the black line is instructional days. So I'm literally going to count how many instructional days that I have, because that won't include things like holiday, winter break, etc. So if I look here, it's basically going by 5. So I'm going to count by 5s. I did this beforehand, and the calendar tells me that I have 160 instructional days. So I'm going to go back to my notes here, and I'm going to put 160 instructional days. Okay, that's great. But if I look at that document again, at the very bottom here it says CST. I know that I'm preparing my students to take the CST. That means I probably have to teach everything before the CST comes around. If I look for that symbol, it's way over here, which means I have to actually teach it before the year ends. This may not be the case with everyone now because they shifted the calendar. This is when we used to start in September, but this may be the case for some of you. So I'm now going to actually subtract how many days have I lost, because it's actually after the CST has begun. 5, 10, 15, say about 20, 25, 30, about 35 days that I'm losing. So I'm going to subtract that, and I'm going to make a note here. I have 125 instructional days before the CST. Now that's great, but I probably want to do a little bit of review before the CST comes around, because that's going to be a lot of content for my students to remember before they take that test. So I'm going to say if I block off a couple weeks, that's 10 school days, I actually only have 115 instructional days if I take into account review for the CST. Awesome. So now how can I use these 115 instructional days? The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look for my state standards and figure out how many standards I have to actually teach. So I Googled this ahead of time, and I see that I have, let's see, motion, forces, matter. Looks like I have 8 units, and there's an investigation experimentation. This is all scientific method type stuff. It actually aligns to my goal of getting my kids to write a lab, but I feel like it's going to have to be spiraled throughout the year. I can't just do it in one chunk. So I'm not going to count those for now. What I'm going to do is I'm literally going to count how many standards I have from units 1 through 8. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I do that for each one. I counted it beforehand. I have 39 total content standards that I have to get to in 8th grade science. So I'm going to go back to my notes here and put 39 total content standards. Now the next thing I want to do is, great, so I know exactly how many instructional days I have before review for the CST. I have the total number of standards. How much time should I dedicate then to each unit, since it looks like I have a different number of standards for each unit? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually make a note of the number of units that I have. So that's all the way, to 8. And I'm going to figure out how many standards do I have, so number of standards. And I'm going to figure out of my total standards, what is the percent that represents. Okay, so I'm going to go back to that document. Let's see, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have 6 in unit 1, 7 in Unit 2, 6 in Unit 3, okay? So 6, 7, 6. I have 5 in Unit 4, 5 in Unit 5, 3 in the next two. 5, 3. And then if I look at the last two, it looks like I have, did I do that right? 3 and then 4 more. Did anyone catch any mistakes?
No. You're good.
Okay, cool. So, I mean, I can just double check by doing a sum formula. Did I catch all the standards? There should be 39. Bam, I'm good. Okay, so now again, what percent of my time should I be spending on each unit considering that they all have a different amount of standards? So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to say equals 6 divided by 39, and I'm going to convert this into a percent. Awesome. That's how much time, or the percent of time I should be spending on that. So if I drag that down, the formula spreads to the rest of them. I now know, wow, Unit 2 is the one with the most standards. I should be spending 18% of my instructional days there, and Unit 6 and 7 are my shortest amount of standards. I should be spending less time there. Okay, so how many days is that? I know that I have 115 instructional days, so I'm going to do again a formula, 15 times 115. Drag that down. Okay, so I don't know how I can make this full numbers, but I can just round. It looks like I have 18, 20, 18, 15, 15, 9, 9, 12. I have to shave off a couple days here and there to make sure that it actually adds up to 115. However, if I look at this, I say to myself, I've heard advice from other teachers, and they tell me that I should spend a little bit of time doing some community building or culture building before the school year starts. So I may not actually have 115 days because I might want to spend at least a week on that. So I'm going to modify this here, and I'm going to add what I like to call Unit 0. There are no standards, but maybe I want to spend about 5 days, which means that here it should actually not be out of 115 days, it should be out of 110. I'm going to modify this so it says 110. Whoops. And, okay, that's a few more days per unit. I'm going to pause here for a moment. Questions on the